When you look at this slide, you see 4 different versions of an image, as if they were published in 4 different newspapers. They all represent a black woman who's holding a newspaper, while a group of white people are watching her. And the colors of these images are different, the so-to-call them names of the newspapers are different, but is their perspective actually different? It doesn't really seem so. The focus of my thesis is actually the perspective reflected in the linguistic content of newspaper articles. And I have used a natural language processing tool that, thanks to a neural network, can process a text, such as a news piece, and identify the events it describes, the participants to the event, and the role played by each of the participants. I've applied this tool to over 100,000 newspaper articles on migrations from contemporary Italian press. And I wanted to find out whether or not newspapers with different political and religious positionings would give a different perspective on migration and its primary actors, or in technical terms, whether different newspapers would use a different framing in their news stories. A lot has been observed on the types of misrepresentation reserved to people who don't belong to a dominant social group. Migrants, for example, tend to be either represented as people in need or as a threat of various kinds to the local population. And in my research, I did find variation between a pitiful or dreadful representation of migrants, depending on the political and religious positioning of the newspapers I was analyzing. But what I also found is that, pretty invariably, Italian newspapers rarely report on the actions performed by migrants in the events in which they're involved, while they extensively focus on the actions performed by members of other social groups, one above all, politicians. In other words, even in newspapers that openly stand up for migrants' rights, the perspective on events, which is often unconscious, confines migrants to being the object of someone else's discourse. And with my thesis, I have proved this quantitatively. Language technologies can be applied to a lot of different purposes nowadays. One is certainly offering new strategies to corroborate or maybe even overturn the results of qualitative research. But most importantly, these technologies can be used to bring to light imbalanced power relations that are otherwise hidden in discourse and society by showing the large-scale extent of unjust discursive practices.